Hello, dear viewers and listeners. Welcome to the latest in a long string of episodes that we call Extra Extra. It's all about whiskey. How was that? Was that a little mix-up for us?
Yeah, you know what?
Slightly little spin.
I quite liked that. It was a little change them up, and
There you go.
well, we say change it up in the bedroom here, and I'm actually in a bedroom, Jason. I'm in a hotel here in New York, in sunny New York. So viewers, if my background, if you're like, where are all of Joshua's bottles? It's because I'm in a bedroom in a
They're
hotel
behind that pillow.
in New York. What's that?
They're behind that pillow.
I know. Gotta fluff it.
Well, as I was beginning to say, I remain your host, Jason Johnston
right.
Yellen. He remains Joshua Morrissey Hatton. And we find ourselves recording in June. And June is a slower month for the breaking whiskey news.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say, as I've been prone to do these last few episodes, keeping our intrepid listeners and viewers informed of the latest celebrity releases, Rod Stewart has released a blended whiskey.
If you want my whiskey and you think it's whiskey, come on, whiskey, let me know.
I feel like that needed one more whiskey in it.
I only do 3. Everything comes in 3s, Jason. You'll learn to
Magic number. This. So it's Wolfie's whiskey, as put out by Sir, and I do apologize for dropping that previously, put out by Sir Rod Stewart.
There you go. I didn't know he was knighted.
Yeah, but he might be a knight, but do you know what he's not, Joshua?
Oh man, I don't know. It could be a plethora of things. What is it?
He's not a keeper of the quick.
He is not a keeper of the quick. That's not like you, me, King Charles, right? No. Come on.
that drop of King Charles. Oh my gosh. All right. Also, just very quickly, we mentioned this on One Nation Under Whiskey, but here we are back in Extra Extra. We did receive a note from Christopher Sebastian Seabass. I'm so used to calling him Seabass. I'm like, is it Christopher? Is it Craig? Is it something else? We tickled him. We tickled his funny bone with the use of June Drinker in the last episode. So hopefully many of our viewers and listeners have run out to purchase their own $1,200 and $1,800 June Drinkers. So it continues to be June, so dive in. Anyway, to bring us to the point, today another friend of ours, Travis Williams, has actually bailed us out. And so a little while back, Travis sent in an article from Whiskey Raiders about a group of roofers, and I'll give the title in a minute, but about a group of roofers who are endeavoring to save us all from the hardship presented by the angel share. So the article is titled, "An Unlikely Group of Ex-Roofers is on a mission to save the whiskey industry millions of dollars by conserving the angel share." And that was posted by David Morrow in Whiskey Raiders on March 27. And we've been sitting on it for a quieter day, and this point of June is definitely a quieter day. First things in reading over the article, we open up with an unlikely group, followed by a team of former roofers, followed by these ex-roofers, followed by if these roofers. So roofing, not riffing, and certainly not roofying, but roofing seems to be at the crux of this matter, Joshua.
Were you counting like I was?
I was not. I was reading.
Roofers, roofing. If you want my whiskey Andy, think it's whiskey. Come on, whiskey, let me know. I told you these things come in threes. So yeah,
Well, and it's in the title.
and it's in the title. Oh, geez, there you go. It's like having the fourth
I,
name.
I just wanted to say, and it's in the title.
So yeah, interesting
Hmm.
title.
Yeah, sorry, we're not done there. I was
Yeah.
celebrating the end of the episode.
So
What? How long were these?
so
Tight 35?
so do me a favor here, and our viewers and listeners. I think the article title is written assuming everybody knows what the angel share is. And what I found interesting, no matter how many seminars you do, no how many whiskey shows you're at, when you start discussing angel share, some people have kind of heard of it. They think they know what it is. Some people definitely know what it is, but I think there are more people that don't fully know what the angel share is and what the problem with it is. So could you go through that before we go into this?
Yeah, let me drop the money quote from the intro, and then we'll pivot back from there.
All
So
right.
so they say, if these roofers can save some of the angel share as they're aiming to do, whiskey producers would indeed be able to make significantly more money by selling more whiskey without changing anything about their production capabilities. So the first thing, as you rightly point out, Joshua, it's there's always a person here or there. I would imagine anybody watching a whiskey podcast on the YouTubes, listening to a whiskey podcast wherever they find their whiskey podcasts, is passingly familiar with the Angel Share.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's key here is the historical context for this, which is, I think, pretty much anybody who's wandered through a distillery tour and has made their way through a warehouse
Mm-hmm.
has heard talk of the losses, right? As soon as you hear loss, you think, well, that doesn't sound like a good
Yeah, it
thing,
doesn't sound
right?
good.
We want gains,
Yeah.
right? Gains are good things. So whether you're in Scotland, Kentucky, India, Israel, Australia, New Zealand, etc., etc., when you put liquid into your cask and you lay it down for maturation, there will be an inevitable loss during that period of maturation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a damper, colder climate like Scotland, you're going to lose alcohol along with that volume. If you're in a warmer, hotter, sunnier climate, Kentucky, Israel, India, Australia. I know there are parts of Japan that replicate Scotland, but it's not very often we talk about the parts of the world that replicate Scotland in the loss of alcohol in the angel
Actually,
share.
the bits of Japan are quite a lot like Kentucky,
Yeah, oh, and
right?
that's the thing about
Yeah.
Japan, right? Exactly. Japan's giving you both. I know if you go south in Japan, you start to get a little bit more Scottish,
Mhm.
which gives me some comfort. But to that point, right? Some climates you're going to be losing alcohol along with your volume. In some other climates, you're going to be gaining alcohol, even though you still lose volume. And then you're going to have what we experienced with our Macmira cask out of the Bodis mine, which is we lost alcohol but gained volume. Somehow, magical mystery, Swedish. Uh, we're still working that one out. But to the process, right? You've had producers looking into this saving of the angel share for a long, long time. Now,
Oh,
I don't know how far back we can go in the historical record, but the absolute North Star for me is Diageo. When Diageo are putting their research and development pound notes into this process,
mm-hmm.
you know there's something important there. You know that many people are talking about that and in search of a solution for that. And they had talked about wrapping whether a cling film comes to mind, a saran wrap comes to mind,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
some type of product that you would put tight over your food
Plastic
before you
stretch
put it in
wrap.
your
Yeah.
refrigerator, right? Right, right. So plastic wrap. So there's that idea of, if you could just cover this cask in the right way, you would save volume. But there's a much bigger ask there, which is maturation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to get into the vagaries of maturation first, or
No,
do we want to?
not yet. I want to. I think it would be good to hear these roofers out and how they came to this idea uh, of their process, and this is their devil cask process. So here's the episode title, right?
Oh, there we are. Gosh,
Yep.
hello.
And so you've got one guy, this guy Grunwald, I want to say was his name,
Works for me.
and so he starts off. He says, "I'm like, I wonder if anyone's actually tried this before and looked in to see what types of applications or patents or technologies are out there to kind of improve wooden barrels. There's not a lot of innovation, there's not a lot of advancement. It's very much an industry that's ripe with heritage and tradition." And I want to get back to that a little bit, but there was one other bit too here. When Grunwald visited Jameson
Mm-hmm.
in Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
and says, while on tour, Grunwald said that the guide mentioned Jameson loses about 26,000 bottles worth of whiskey every day due to evaporation. I don't know if that's a made up number, but that sure, like, you start doing the math, like multiply that by 365, and I don't think that any of that's correct. But hey, I'm not a mathematician. Um, well, hold on one second. There was one thing that Grunwald went on to say, and he says, "I'm like, man, this sounds like a kind of waterproofing vapor barrier type of thing that I've spent my whole career for the past decade on developing, designing, and working with," he said. So, he goes to Jameson, he hears this number, whether the number is accurate or not. What is accurate is that there is angel share, right? That there
Correct.
is loss,
Correct. Correct.
right? And so he sees an opportunity to fix that. And here we are.
So it is pretty key, right? That we've gone, roofers, roofing, ex-roofers, so on and so forth. And then we get to, well, wait a second. If we put a barrier on these wooden casks, the way we put a barrier on a roof to keep rain out, then we will keep alcohol vapors in. But, and I think this is where we can't help but discuss maturation, right?
Oh, I thought you were going to say where we
Color
can't
is
help but discuss butts. But, yeah, okay, maturation. That makes much more sense.
butts, pipes, barrels, barriques, quarter
There you
casks,
go. Pro
octaves.
level, Jason.
They all, right? We talk about the wood as a semi-permeable membrane, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's important that vapor gets out. It's important that external climate then gets drawn in. The oak pores are essential to maturation. They're essential to color,
Yeah.
to flavor, to aroma,
Yeah.
to new make spirit no longer being new make spirit.
Yeah, I did an event this past weekend up in Massachusetts, and it was an M&H event. And you almost lead an M&H tasting with, here's a distillery in a really hot climate losing a lot of liquid. That sucks. What's good about it, however, is their whiskey matures at a much more rapid rate, so you can actually bottle it at 3 years of age. And I mean, there's no straight equivalent, but you can say, man, this is as mature as a 12-year-old Scotch whiskey, a 15-year-old Scotch whiskey. And quite often when you say, how old do you think this is? Because people think in terms of Scotch when it comes to age,
Yeah.
they'll say 8, 10, 12, 15. But in when I led the tasting with that, the question immediately came up where they say, have they considered wrapping their casks in some sort of a plastic wrap or something like that? So right, it seems like this obvious thing, which is one of the reasons Diageo spent all that money. I don't know what the number was,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
money they spent to start doing that. But every time that question pops up, every time I think about that Diageo experience, I think back to our very first interview with Ollie Chilton when he talked about the importance of oxygen when it
Yeah.
comes to
Yeah.
maturing the liquid, that it was almost
Yeah.
as important as the wood, because it helps that maturation process along. You can't have maturation without it. You really need that to help it along.
Which is exactly my thought when we talk about coating a cask is, on one hand, you're saying, look, here's the final product that comes out of these casks, and we think this is delicious.
Mhm.
Isn't it a shame that we lose some volume along the way? And so then you think, well, okay, let's save the volume by coating the cask. Okay, we've saved the volume, but we don't have the same delicious whiskey coming out of that cask at the end of the day.
Mhm.
So if you go about saving the volume, what final product are you going to get from the cask? Back to my North
Yeah.
Star example with Diageo, Diageo are not wrapping their casks. Diageo are not, you know, doing anything to fight against Angel Share. Diageo spent R&D money investigating this,
Mhm.
and Diageo decided it was not a good idea. For me, that laid this conversation to rest. That was the end of it. The day Diageo said, "Nah."
Well, let me play devil's advocate here. Uh,
Oh, I see what you did with Devil's
yeah.
Cask.
And it's really tortured. This isn't a devil's advocate thing, but
You're
I want
trying
to.
really hard here.
I'm just trying so hard. I want to put a twist on it here, right? When I think about the idea of coating these casks or wrapping casks or doing something, when it comes to this specific case of these guys with Devil Cask, they say the coating reduces the overall
Hmm.
angel share by about 46%.
Hmm.
So the process is still happening, albeit about 50% slower than it normally would.
Yeah.
Now,
Do you have the next quote there ready to go in a banner for the viewers, or do you want me to read it for the listeners?
yeah, why don't you read it? Because I don't have it
Yeah.
in the chat.
So right after that 46% that you just mentioned, the quote is, and this comes from the Aegis Coating Technology website, the coating greatly diminishes ethanol and water evaporation from the cask without significantly affecting the flavor profile of the maturing spirit. In addition, the coating will continue to allow oxygen to permeate the wooden cask.
So if that's accurate, then maybe they've cracked a nut here. However, I I don't. I guess they'll find out, right? It's going to take time for them to find out. But I think one of the things that likely became clear to Diageo when you wrap those casks and you don't allow for the breathing, will it make for bad whiskey? It may not make for bad whiskey.
Hmm. Hmm.
However,
Hmm.
Diageo's entire, I wouldn't say their entire business plan, but their major products depend on this idea of consistency,
Correct. Yep.
right?
Yep.
And if you go around wrapping your casks and it changes, even in a small way, your liquid, that's going to affect what your brands and bottlings
Yeah.
and things like that look like going forward. So for a big drinks group like that, maybe not so good. For a young distillery that's still getting their legs, looking to get off the ground, doesn't want to lose a ton of angel share while they grow, they don't yet have a flavor profile that they have to stick to. Maybe something like this can work. And hence my devil's advocate. Is there a place where something like this can work for someone in our industry, whether it's whiskey or another kind of spirit?
Yeah. The fact that you add in time there, it will take time, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about some early testing that they've done. The question becomes, was it a 53-gallon barrel? Was it a smaller, was it one of these, much, much smaller?
Yeah.
We know from craft producers who have done early day experimentation, experiments give you an idea of where you might be able to take some of this
Mm-hmm.
without necessarily being a final product, right? And I can't help but think back to wood spirals being added to smaller casks, right? Tremendous color really early on with an immature spirit that
Mm-hmm.
was very woody. So,
Yeah. Yep.
I feel like we're back to those trade offs again, and that
Mm.
time, you invest in this, you cut down ethanol evaporation, you cut down water evaporation, you lose 46% less volume than an untreated cask. Oxygen is still allowed to permeate. That's a lot of words,
Yeah.
right?
It
That's a
it
lot of
just,
things.
I don't know if this is an old man statement here. Maybe it is.
Oh,
But
oh.
but it you started making the list, right? Of of things that kind of almost get you there, right? Of adding in the wood spirals,
Mhm,
of rapid aging your spirit. We've spoken with the Bespoken guys, and
mhm,
their whiskey's quite quaffable, but it was clear that it like wasn't there yet. That like there was something a little missing.
mm,
And then you have this here, and it just seems like every time someone tries to innovate
mhm.
something to work nature in a way that nature doesn't necessarily want to work, you don't get the results you're hoping for. You get a version of the results you're hoping for, and that version could be just fine. But if you can't, like, come on, even on Star Trek, replicators can't perfectly create the foods that they loved on Earth or on, other planets, Vulcan. And my point is, technology only gets you so far, whether in real life or Star Trek. Gets you close. It gets you to an approximation, but it doesn't fully get you there. Obviously, I wish these guys the best, and I hope that through this process they may find some sort of an innovation that helps, because it really is a problem, especially for hot climate producers, to lose so much so quickly. It'd be great for them to have a solution without negatively affecting their final product.
Yeah, can I give you a quote that's doing a lot of heavy lifting?
Yeah, sure.
If successful, and if it truly doesn't have a noticeable impact on the flavor of the spirit
Mm.
of the spirit. This technology could be groundbreaking for the whiskey industry. so, so you talk about your rule of threes. If successful, and if it truly doesn't have a noticeable impact, this technology could be groundbreaking for the whiskey industry, as it will allow distilleries, especially those in higher altitude states such as Colorado, increase their yields and profits.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of heavy lifting going on there, yeah? It
Well,
would be nice if nothing changed flavor. It would be nice if we didn't have to lose volume. It would be nice if we could set our watches by this, right? That was the chap's Grunwald's earlier quote, right? It's an industry built on tradition and heritage,
mm,
right? And I think
thank
that's
you.
that's very true when you talk about Scotch and you talk about Irish. I think it's less true when you talk about American producers who,
Whoa. I'll let you finish your sentence there, but I may take issue.
but it's to your very point. When you've got a distillery that comes online in 2000 or 2010, right? The world's your oyster. You can define
True.
yourself however you want to define yourself, right? You can play around with different innovations. You can take a corner of your warehouse and dedicate it to coated casks, right? If you're wild turkey, you might be less inclined,
And
right?
and
Right?
and for
If
and
you're
so this is this go on.
just one more comment,
Yeah,
and I'll
go,
give
go,
you the
go.
floor. And if you're Jim Beam, who came out with the Devil's Cut,
Yeah.
right, where they're literally shaking the pores dry of the last drops of whiskey, they still weren't wrapping casks. They were still allowing maturation to do what maturation does. They were still allowing evaporation to occur and that increase of alcohol to occur, but they had a different process for wringing out the last drops. So there is innovation, right?
There,
There's no
there's
doubt there's innovation.
there's innovation, but I just want to be certain that when you talked about heritage and tradition and thought that maybe it wasn't so much in the US, I would argue, granted, we have far fewer long-standing major producers than Scotland has, but we still have our own traditions and heritage. However, I agree with you. Just like Diageo can play around and innovate and try things, those like Buffalo Trace, Heaven Hill Wild Turkey, and so on, Dickel, Jack Daniels, and so on, can play around and maybe come out with some innovative products like the Devil's Cut. However, they're not, and, and maybe through all these experimentations, they'll find something that honors their spirit. But when you're going up against tradition and heritage, I just don't know that science in a layer of silicone or a plastic wrap is really going to honor that tradition, even if it gets it exact. There's something to be said about craft and working with nature and telling that age old story of generation to generation, producing the liquid in the same manner that the generation prior did, which is a certain, there's a dollar sign you can't attach to that. There's a feeling you can't necessarily attach to that, but it's something that you want, right? It's something that is more attractive to you than something that's, we Mickey Mouse this, and not to say this is Mickey Mousing, but we tweaked this, we did that, and we got this other thing, right? There's still something to be said for tradition and heritage, and I just don't know if all these innovations can ever get over that hump because of how attached to we as a people are to our traditions and heritage.
But I'm intrigued by something you said just a second ago, which is even if
Mm,
an innovation like this, let's say, for example, produced a similar flavor, right? Because earlier on, when you were playing devil's advocate, you said, that this might hinge on consistency, right? And if you're Diageo, your
Yeah.
business is built on consistency. And
Yeah.
even though it might have been perfectly fine, you didn't want to mess with your own consistency.
Yeah.
But here you're throwing in a new wrinkle, which is, even if, say, rest all the arguments, say this does work, say it is the same flavor, you don't think the bean counters would want to save that that evaporation, that they would see those insert number of bottles per day here, right? That those
Oh,
bean counters would say, look, we've got heritage and tradition. We could also be putting out X number more bottles connected to current production numbers.
right. So I guess what I said earlier was more of a blanket statement. I think in this particular case, this seems well, and I guess we need to talk about this particular case because that's the point of the conversation. But in this particular case, if using this system or some system like it allows producers to create the same liquid, flavor everything while losing less spirit, but aging it for the same amount of time, or maybe even being allowed to age it a bit longer, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then I think that this could work. That becomes a very viable and attractive innovation that is in harmony with the traditions, because I think it's sticking to normal maturation time. I think when we start playing around with maturation time or adding in chips or spirals or something to just speed up the process, which then turns the liquid into something that isn't familiar as to what we think of as whiskey, then that's when my feathers get ruffled, and that's when my blanket statement more applies. Right? Does that make
Okay.
does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it seemed like a moment ago you were dismissing innovation for heritage and tradition.
No, 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 no. I wasn't just if they came across that way, or if I said it that way, I do apologize. I'm not dismissing it for that. If it can work in harmony with it, I think then we can be safe. And I'm not just saying for me, I'm just saying people love their 25-year-old Macallan, right? People miss Elijah Craig saying 12 years right on the front of the bottle, right? There's something about the aging of even if it's 5 years like Wee Beastie, right? Or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's something about that where you can hang your hat on it, and it can mean something. Um, yeah,
Yeah, the part that remains open for me is, I would imagine, and I may be incorrect in this, but I would imagine as long as casks have been losing volume,
yeah,
people around said casks have been asking themselves, how can we make this not happen? And the fact that we sit in 2023 and casks still lose volume, and a number of tricks and techniques have been applied, I remain open to the advent of a technology that cracks that nut,
yeah,
right? That
yeah.
solves that problem. And maybe this will be it. Maybe it will be, right? They've got enough ifs doing enough heavy lifting that maybe it'll come to fruition, right?
Hmm.
But the fact that it hasn't worked yet, well, allows me to remain skeptical that
Yeah.
that maybe it's a tougher nut to crack than brushed on silicon is going to solve.
Well, for the sake of these guys behind Devil's Cask, maybe it'll work out. Maybe they have, you know, I when we started our business, people said, "We wish you luck. I hope it works out for you." I wish them luck. I hope it works out, because if it does, it does help friends in the industry. That would be great. Again, time will tell, and that's the thing about whiskey. It takes time.
Is there anything else in the article you want to ring out, or do we pretty much? Oh, there
I
is
like
maybe just
making
one
that
at the
ring
end.
out.
Yeah, there's one at the end for me. At the moment, Devil's Cask has about 75 coated barrels of whiskey aging, with plans to increase that number to hundreds or thousands. And the company isn't limiting itself to whiskey. So there you go. The question becomes, how do you continue to hear? Does a producer come out and say, "Hey, we have released this this offering, this bottling, and we saved X number of bottles from using this product"? It'd be interesting to see how does this news keep going. Kind of like the Diageo, right? They
Yeah.
didn't. We knew it was happening. We didn't necessarily knew that it had ended. We just know that they haven't wrapped any for general release. So things like this can sometimes go away quietly into the night. So again, we'll keep our eyes and ears open. Travis Williams, who sent us the original piece, can keep us informed if he sees more floating around. Other than that, I think we'll get out of here, Joshua. We've had a day. Hopefully we have an episode.
So if people like Travis Williams want to get in touch with us, how would they do that, Jason?
I think they should send an email to info@singlecastnation.com or an email to questions@onenationunderwhiskey.com. No E in whiskey. Viewers can add comments below. They can also smash that subscribe button. Pew, pew, pew. And there's ringing of the bell. And I don't know what that means. And it might be rude. And a young person told me to say it. And I might have made a terrible mistake.
Oh, wow. Jason, you didn't just say what I thought you said, did you?
I did.
I have no idea what it means. So anyway.
Heritage, not tradition. We are going to get out of here until the next time. We will make sure we've got drams in hand the next time, because not talking about whiskey is sad. So we'll make sure we're talking about whiskey next time.
Yeah. And drinking
in our glasses.
There you go.
Sip, sip,
there you go.
Sip, sip.
All right.
All right. We will get out of here, as we have been prone to do, by saying peace.
Peace.
Peace.